Hey guys, welcome back to AMC. Thank you so much for joining me for round 6 of the Connecticut Regional. Today's match we have Joe playing LanniKraken. I believe he's sitting there on the left, and Marc Berenbach playing TargLion on the right. Thank you for coming back to us here. I know we had a little bit of a hiatus as I've been pretty busy the last couple of days, but I'm very excited to get back to it. Lots of good stuff on the horizon on AMC. I'm so happy you guys are joining us. Never like to hear your opponent say, yeah, I'll keep. Oh boy. Okay, so right off the bat, we have essentially Asha versus Drogo. Looks like the card with the glare on it is Wendemir. Not sure whose setup I prefer more here, actually. I'm a big fan of Asha. I think she is one of the most efficient characters in the game, especially if you can get a little bird on her. She has the potential to deliver 3 challenges with a single character, and really, that's incredible. But in 2.0, when characters are at a premium, you cannot deny that being able to do 2 military icons, or 2 military challenges in a round, isn't one of the greatest things.
Alright, who's going to be going first here?
I think
so both players drop an economy plot. I really like Marc opening with calling here because it gives him very strong economy. He'll have a total of 7 gold with his plot and the Sea Road. And I prefer that over the Noble Cause because it is unconditional economy. And he has the 6th initiative, which gives him the flexibility to decide whether or not he wants to go first after he sees his opponent's plot. And now he has even more economy with the Illyrio's estate. I love this play by Marc. A couple of times throughout the tournament, I had to waste my Noble Cause, unfortunately. Through circumstances of the plot my opponent chose to throw, I had to opt to play things that Noble Cause could not help reduce. So that is a risk with Noble Cause. You know, if you know exactly what you want to play, a little bit less so, but later in the game it gets a little tougher, especially if you have no targets. It can be wasted, and that 0 initiative can be a little bit of a stick in the mud. Marc dropping the Hound here, still has plenty of money. He wants to drop as many red icons as he can to take advantage of Drogo.
Rhaegal or Drogon? Okay.
I've seen a lot of people play Drogo but then not have enough military icons to take advantage of the ability that he provides. I also love that Marc saved 2 gold here.
5-6.
That allows him to bluff the Put to the Sword and the Dracarys, which is going to change the way Joe has to play.
Not for a bit.
Especially Asha. If Marc is wise enough to leave a dragon standing, I don't believe Joe will risk including Asha in a challenge, because with a dragon standing and a gold left, she will die instantly to Dracarys, and a dupe will be wasted, as well as an awesome character, unless he has a Hand's Judgment in his hand. I'm trying to peek there to see if he does. Looks like I saw a Put to the Sword, but I don't think I saw a Hand's Judgment. So let's see what Marc opts to do. If I was him, I would make sure I left a dragon standing and a gold saved, no matter what, just to keep Asha out of my own way. Because I believe at this point in the tournament, they're playing at the final top table of Swiss. Marc has to assume that Joe is good enough to know not to use Asha in a challenge in those circumstances. Joe's smart enough to play defensively and not risk losing Asha until he can attack with her in a safer spot.
Unopposed.
Reactions. I have no reactions.
Marc attacking Joe's hand immediately.
It's a good one.
Put to the Sword gets taken. Marc's got to be happy to see that. He feels a little bit safer, especially with Joe having so much money left over. I do think I see a Hound in Joe's hand, so we might see that 4 gold put to use pretty soon. I love the way Joe's flipping his cards. It gives us a chance to get a sneak peek at what he's got in there. I keep trying to see if he has any tricks that would matter to us. I thought I saw a second put to the sword, which would give him a very interesting choice as to whether or not to ambush in the Hound or attempt to overcommit the military and use the put to the sword.
Okay. Claim.
Unopposed.
Okay, so now it's slightly less worrisome to include Asha in the challenge because he did get the use of the dupe. So now it's more likely that he may opt to sacrifice Asha in order to get the Dracarys out of Marc's hand, if Marc has one. So that is now a much more attractive risk that she doesn't have a dupe on board, because she's sort of served her functionality. Interesting decision that Joe opted to use Asha's dupe instead of killing the Chud. I'm wondering if maybe he's concerned about economy in this spot, or if he was just knowing that he was going to attack with her and didn't want to waste a dupe if she gets lost to Dracarys. I'd be curious to hear what he has to say about that decision. I myself probably would have sacked the dupe, or excuse me, would have sacked the reducer. Just in case, I feel much safer having dupes. Alright, so I can see Joe's hand here. He definitely has a Hound. If he could angle it just a little bit more, we could see the rest of the cards. So close. Okay, so Joe throws caution to the wind. He's saying, in essence, if you've got the Dracarys, I am willing to let you kill Asha just to get that out of the hand. And sometimes that is the right move. You can't play scared in Game of Thrones. Sometimes you gotta just say, if the opponent has their Dracarys, you have to make them use it. And I agree with that decision. And here it comes.
Dracarys. That is going to work.
So let's talk about this for a second. I think Joe made the right move because you can't play the whole game worried that Marc has their Dracarys and assuming he may or may not use it in a given situation. Sometimes it's best to just get that card out of Marc's hand. So now there's no dragons standing. One Dracarys is gone.
So I get unopposed.
Unfortunately, Drogo gets put to the sword, which is horrible for Marc.
Renown.
But again, I do like this decision by Joe. It's unfortunate to lose Asha, but getting the card out of Marc's hand, I believe, is worth it. Knowing that he'd be able to trigger that put to the sword and get Drogo gone. He essentially traded Asha for Drogo, and now he has superior board position, just having to deal with 2 hatchlings while he has a duped Tywin and very good economy.
I'm not the only one indecisive about the plot this turn.
Interesting decision there to ambush in the burn men. Not sure why. Yes, he got dominance for it. Maybe he's trying to play a little bit rushy. I know we saw Joe play earlier, but I don't remember what was in his plot deck, so very interested to see what happens here. I do remember that Joe's running first snow. So with 2 hatchlings on board, we might see first snow, and that would be my guess out of Joe. For Marc, depending on what is in his hand, maybe a summons. I believe Marc is probably smart enough to anticipate the first snow here, but I don't know what he would really counter it with.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm going to count coppers.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
I'm very surprised by that.
I'm going to say that...
I think that is actually a fairly advanced move by Joe. There he's opting to not drop the first snow. And by doing so, he's essentially telling Marc, I dare you to play more 3-cost characters because I'll just first snow him next turn. So this is along the same lines as the concept I was talking about with Wildfire. Once you throw it, you're giving your opponent the advantage of knowing that it's gone for the round, or for the game. So by preserving the fear of first snow existing, he is limiting Marc's choices in marshalling. Or at least he's impacting the psychology of how the match is playing out. It's a tempo play. So Marc is probably going to focus on playing bigger characters if he's got them. That's what I would do to try to defend the first snow. Next turn, you can't really afford to invest a lot of your board position in 3 gold characters when you know your opponent's plot deck has first snow. And I do believe Marc, even though if they haven't played in this tournament yet, by round 6, there's enough scouting going on where I believe it's common information who's playing what. Most likely, you know, you're not supposed to scout, but people do scout. People talk. You know, I think that's a very fun part of the meta Game of Thrones is meta versus meta. You know, people are scouting other people. They're talking with their metamates, giving everybody tips and hints. You know, some people may not like that. Okay, this is a very good move by Marc. So Tywin is now milked. So that is going to take 2 gold away from Joe during his marshalling, which is most likely why Marc opted to go first, because he knew he could take that 2 gold, which could be a critical 2 gold away from Joe.
So 3 more gold?
Yep.
All right, let's see what Joe has.
You have what, 4 gold up?
I have 4 gold.
Power challenge.
Theon?
So Joe, we see dropping a 4-string or a 4-cost character. Could be telegraphing the first no next turn.
The Hound?
The Hound, that doesn't really say anything, so that's going to go back to his hand either way,
That
most
is the
likely.
Hound, and it is your challenge phase. Sure is.
So both players are set up fairly well for a potential first snow next turn by Joe. I'll be curious to see how the round plays out. Even though Tywin is milked, he's still a Tricon, which, I mean, the Tricons are so rare in 2.0. I still think he's a fantastic character, even blank. You know, obviously, much better without the milk, but Tricon's a Tricon.
Claim?
Tyrion doing some work there. That will hurt the ability for Joe to do first snow. You know, everybody loves ambushing in those burn men. So Marc's probably happy to see that. Marc is in a very difficult spot here because Joe has superior board position, and there's really nothing Marc can do to change that, unfortunately. You know, when you're playing a game like this, you have to ask yourself before you initiate a challenge, like what are you hoping to gain by initiating that challenge? And what do you stand to lose by initiating that challenge? And right now, if Marc continues to initiate challenges, he's just leaving himself more and more open for Joe to rush his face. You know, Joe has 4 standing characters. Marc now only has 2.
With the little dragon.
And it's my opinion Marc should be playing more defensively here. Because I can't quite see how much power Joe has, but it looks like he has maybe 3 on his house plus 1 on Tywin. If he's not careful, Marc that is, Joe could end this round, you know, with 9 power and be within striking distance next turn.
All opposed?
You will win.
Okay. Back to my hand.
So Marc doesn't really have all that much to gain by continuing to push challenges here, other than leaving himself open. You know, he's not going to... Let's say he pushes a military challenge through. Like, who is Joe going to kill for claim that is really going to do work as far as evening the board state that Marc couldn't just drop Wildfire next turn instead? That's the kind of thinking that I like to see.
Military?
So I really, really hate this play by Marc. Unless he has some super big bag of tricks that I don't understand, I don't know why he would kneel out his board. And just think, let's say Joe just lets this go unopposed. What is the best case scenario for Marc? The best case scenario is Joe kills a Burnman or a dupe off of Tywin. The board is still overwhelmingly in Joe's favor, and the end result is Marc has 1 power for unopposed and a completely knelt board. So I don't think he really thought that through as to what he stood to gain versus what he stood to lose by making that challenge.
Okay, I win. Force reaction. Would you like the treachery?
And again, we have to point out that we are making this analysis based on what we can see only. We don't know what Marc was attempting to do because we can't see his hand. So I'm analyzing that decision as a mistake based on not knowing what is in Marc's hand, as is all I can do. But, you know, I'd like to hear from Marc. If Marc, if you're listening, please let us know if you remember that moment, what you were trying to do there. So we do know he had enough gold to reuse the Hound and defend, but I still really don't like the decision. So I would like to hear from Marc there what his thinking was.
I will defend.
Okay, you win.
You'll bounce back to my hand.
Hound doing a lot of aerobics today, in and out and in and out.
2 gold now?
2 golds.
And how many in hand, please?
4.
I guess that's a good one. That's what I'm told.
Power. Stealthing that guy.
Well, at least I know I'm going to be absolutely.
Going to be a pretty big power swing here for Joe. Things can quickly get out of hand if Marc isn't careful.
It does take up long to go.
The power is adding up
2
awfully
gold to
quickly.
1. You're down.
All right, let's think about plot choices. What these players have. There's really no incentive for Marc to wildfire.
I have 5.
He does have some cards in his hand, but unless he's got like a known game plan in his hand, we're talking about Marc, I would like to see him drop a summons or something that will guarantee him a way to get back into the board position game. You know, it's not too far off, but with the stealth on the board for Joe and a potentially first snow incoming, Marc really, really needs to dig for an answer to what he has to assume is a first snow coming either this turn or next.
Yeah, I gotta think about this one. So Danny's coming to town, huh?
So we got to assume Marc has somebody good in his hand if he's going to throw Noble. It's very risky to throw Noble and hope you top deck into that character. I believe we heard Joe say he dropped Marched.
First player?
Not a bad plot. I still, you know, maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe Joe is not running first snow, but if he is running first snow and is still opting not to play it, I would mark that as a mistake given what is on the board now. We don't know what his plan is, obviously, but I would have liked to see a first snow in that spot. It would have left Marc with maximum of 2 characters on board, and you know, Joe would have had Tywin duped plus Theon plus whatever else he could muster. He would have been guaranteed board position with the save of Tywin. He's opting to play a little bit safer, and again, another aspect I would like maybe to point out is that Joe could be approaching this game as a completely meaningless game. They're both 4-1, but they're at the top table, so they're both probably going to make the cut. So Joe may be experimenting with different strategies here just to see what works and what doesn't.
That's
Ouch! And then that happened. The Crown of Gold. Love that card. Point and click removal. You can't say enough about it. I'd play 10 of them if I could. Obviously much better if you're going second because you can see what your opponent does, but Marc, for 4 gold, simultaneously removed a character with stealth and a power on him. Love that play.
No gold, right?
0.
You do.
And the stealth gets replaced. Love stealth in 2.0.
Your challenge.
My challenge.
It looks like Marc's Noble Cause was wasted. As far as I can tell. I don't believe the Hound is a lord. So this has happened to me a fair amount. The 5 gold is still pretty attractive, and sometimes you throw it just for that. But it hurts. You die a little bit inside when you waste that 2 economy, especially if you top deck Daenerys next turn.
I'm going to
I think Marc really has to try to push the military challenge and try to eat away at Joe's board. He's got to make up some ground somewhere.
Gain 2 gold.
Yep.
Unless you want to.
No, that's good.
You know, he knows that he can't win it unless Joe lets him win it, but you have to at least try. Winning an intrigue or a power challenge isn't going to help you to get back into the game right now, unfortunately. This is now a game of board position. And I think this is a spot where you want to attack your opponent's board because you're only going to fall further behind. Yes, getting cards out of his hand is valuable, but I generally prefer, if I'm behind in board position, I have to attack the board position and worry about the hand at a later date. You know, if the board position is about equal, then maybe I'll care more about the hand to worry about the future. But if he doesn't start getting characters off of the board, off of Joe's board, he's just going to fall further and further behind.
I'm going to do a power challenge.
Unless he's planning on wildfiring next round so that it doesn't matter.
That will be...
And that very well could be what's going on. Marc could know that he's going to wildfire next turn so that it doesn't matter if he gets a military claim or not. He's got the dupe on the dragon, and the hound will probably go back to his hand.
And then it's going to be a pretty
Yep, you got it.
challenge.
With the 2 of them.
3 in the hand, right?
Brandon.
That is for 10.
I mean, Joe can pretty much do whatever he wants here. There's not much that Marc can do about it.
Be on here. 10. Just
Yeah.
Military.
I'm a little bit surprised by that move, actually. Military challenge. So he's initiating a military challenge that, on the face value of what we can see, Marc can defend and win.
If you march, don't march, it would have been interesting.
So Marc has to defend it.
Okay, you win.
But so the way Joe's talking, it seems like that's exactly what he wanted. So let's see what he's doing here.
Power.
I don't quite see just yet.
Deal.
Yeah, how it goes.
I would have liked to see him try to win the military challenge.
Okay, let's move. to
Very
dominance.
interesting.
I have 3 for dominance. So I get that.
Sorry, I had one thing before dominance. I had one action before. Sorry, never. I missed the window. So.
Okay.
Before you ended the challenge, I was going to do something. But it doesn't.
Well, yeah, if I don't initiate another
I know,
challenge.
I know.
Okay.
I should have done it before we resolved the power.
Gotcha. And then after dominance is counted, I'm going to move over.
Very interesting. I can't figure out why Joe did not initiate the military challenge there in enough military to win. A little confused.
Did you take one off for the power?
You 2 are my last. So that's pretty good. Right. That's pretty good.
I'm gonna count. Noble number 2.
I love Targ.
Okay, so we have another noble cause from Marc.
Go first.
Joe drops noble
I'm going to
Calm over Westeros. He really doesn't have any bad choices here.
I'll name power.
I mean, Joe really could have named anything. He's pretty well protected. There's really no challenges that Marc can win right now that will really make a difference in the way this game is likely going to play out. But power challenge, you can't really fault him for making that decision. It's going to prevent Marc from slowing Joe's win condition down, essentially. You know, losing a character isn't going to hurt Joe. Losing a card at this point isn't going to hurt him. He might even have to discard for reserve at this rate. Not looking good for Marc, unfortunately.
I was on top field a long time. I was so pumped when I saw the Dragon. It's a game-changing card. And then they were like, oh, this card's for snow. Completely nullifies the fact that it's good.
Does Marc get to use his noble cause this time? Does not look like it. Because I don't think Jorah is a lord either. Maybe I'm wrong. I haven't played Targ very much, but looks like double noble wasted.
1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I was.
You were going to. I do it all the time. All my pens.
Uh-oh. Dueling Tyrians.
There he is.
So, unless a miracle happens,
Your challenge.
I'm fairly certain this game is over. There's really not much Marc can do here. You know, the Tyrians sort of cancel each other out economy-wise. Really the tipping point is that Marc's hand is pretty much empty, and Joe has all the cards. So even if Marc can somehow force a reset, Joe has the cards to reflood the board.
Let me go talk somewhere else if you're going to be loud.
Joe laying the smackdown. People chit-chatting. That is a pet peeve of mine, for what it's worth. When I'm trying to concentrate, especially in a tight situation in a game that matters, I do my best to not say anything or to be a dick about it, but I really hate it when people are standing directly behind me talking super loud when I'm trying to concentrate. Yeah, so back to what I was saying. Really, so we are now essentially about done with mid-game, approaching end-game. And this is where the hand size disparity really starts to matter, because the more cards you have, the more weapons you have. And that is the strength of the Lannister archetype, definitely in 1.0 and certainly in 2nd edition. One of the most effective strategies in 1.0, and it will be in 2nd edition as well, especially once Valor is released, is to attack your opponent's hand until it is empty or near empty, drop Valor, which kills everybody in play and likely wipes their board, and then you have a fistful of cards, and they have an empty hand and an empty board, and then they are top decking, and you wipe the floor with them. Now, you can't do that in 2nd edition yet because there is no pure reset. Valor does not exist in 2nd edition yet, but it will, and when it does, I expect the houses that attack your hand to be much, much more surging in popularity, because that immediately becomes a viable strategy.
Intrigue, triggers.
If you can force the opponent to use all their cards through whatever means you can, either getting them out of their hand or forcing them to play them, and then wipe their board with a plot like Valor, clean up any dupes the next turn with a Marched, and then leave them with no hand and no board, and meanwhile you've got 5 or 6 cards in your hand, I will venture to say you will win in that situation 92 times out of 100 or more. It's an almost certainty. If you can get your opponent to top deck, he's probably going to lose the game. I think that was a deliberate decision by Nate and FFG to start 2nd edition without a pure reset, just to sort of force people to play 2nd edition differently.
Power, Stealth the Hound.
And I like that. I think by doing that, 2nd edition feels completely different than 1st edition. And it took people a long time to get used to it. But it lends the game, at least in my opinion, a much less rock, paper, scissors feel. It makes it feel safer. You don't. So in 1st edition, people were afraid to play anything really above 4 cost towards the end of the run of 1st edition because of the existence of Valor. It was essentially point-and-click removal for your opponent's entire board, and nobody wanted to invest 5 gold or more in a character that could be wiped out by the turn of a plot. In 2nd edition, you don't have that. You can, knowing that your opponent has to work for that removal with a Put to the Sword or a Tears, and that the worst a plot deck can do is a Wildfire, you feel much safer investing 7 gold in a character.
I messed up. That's correct.
And I really like that. I enjoy that safety net. And it is going to be, I think, new 2nd edition players are going to be in for a rude awakening when Valor hits. There's going to be a lot of complaints. I think a lot of people are going to quit because, once again, a card is going to be released that is going to fundamentally change the way they have to think about deck building and playing. And a lot of them are going to hate it. A lot of them will not be able to make that mental adjustment. I mean, I hesitate to say I'll be one of them. I'm certainly not going to quit, but it is very jarring when a card like that hits the meta. You really have to, the game that you know and love completely changes, and you have to adjust or die. once Valor's released, if you continue to play 2nd edition the way you've been up until now, you will lose. I promise you, you will lose. You have to adjust your thinking. All of a sudden, dupes are more important. Cards that are immune to plot effects are more important. Saves are more important. And the mere existence of Valor is going to cause people... It's actually a very interesting dynamic to think about, because the existence of Valor is going to force people into wanting to play cheaper characters so that losing them to Valor does not hurt so much. You're only investing 3, maybe 4 gold in Valor. But at the same time, the existence of First Snow is forcing people to play more expensive characters. So that play in the meta is going to be very interesting for me to watch, to see where that ends up. The sweet spot is obviously 4 gold. I think people are going to be filling their decks with upwards of 15 or 20 4-cost characters if they can, because that is going to be the sweet spot where they're going to be effective and powerful, but it won't hurt too bad when they lose to Valor, and they also won't be affected by First Snow. And there's a lot of very good 4-cost cards out there. But that is going to be a delicate balance to try to learn, especially for players that haven't had to do that yet.
Over to you with all the gold.
So it looks like this game is winding down. Joe with a pile of power on his house. I'd say that Marc's body language indicates that he feels a little defeated, but I don't know him all that well. I just met him maybe a couple of months ago when I went up to Boston for a tournament, and he's a pretty reserved guy, so I think this is sort of his body language, whether he's winning or losing. He doesn't get too excited either way, but I think he can sort of read the writing on the wall at this point. Interesting to note that Marc is, from my understanding, a very accomplished Magic player, but is newer to Thrones. He's been playing, I believe he started with 2nd edition about midway through the release. But again, a lot of the skills of Magic will translate over to Thrones for the most part. And he is clearly, if he's sitting at the top table in round 6 of a 55-person regional, is making the transition well. So we like to see that. I always like pulling players away from Magic.
8.
At least the good ones.
Okay. That is going to work.
Yep.
So anything before claim? No,
Fatigue coming in there. Marc taking away his own power for power
Oh my God,
play.
I'm getting power. It's amazing.
I always wonder, when mistakes like that happen, how often they're not caught. And if that ever happened in a major game that actually affected the outcome of the match. Because I know I've done it. I think everybody's done it. This is now you're well into your probably 7th. So even though this is round 6, these guys have probably been playing for 7 or 8 hours, including the break and people playing to time. And they still are facing probably 3 more games if they make the finals ahead. Mental fatigue is certainly a factor here.
You get gold also?
Intrigue, Stealthing the Dragon. Tyrion is at 6.
Yeah, I think that the interplay between when Valor is released and when Valor and First Snow are in the meta simultaneously, I think that will be fascinating to watch unfold. And I really don't know how it will. It's going to be very interesting to watch, just from a perspective of not only how the cost curve of popular decks will change, but if the feeling of the game will change. And I think the more you play this game, the more you're going to start to realize that there's sort of like a natural ebb and flow to every match, and that ebb and flow is generally surrounding whether or not your opponent has thrown his reset yet. And now you're going to have to not only dodge the Valor, you're going to have to dodge the First Snow. And what I believe will happen is people are going to start gravitating to one or the other. And but the bizarre thing is, even if people are actually, let's say for example, playing Valor and gravitating towards Valor, you still have to play as if they have First Snow. So you still have to prepare and play as if they have both, even though they probably will only choose one. What is going to be interesting to me is to see which one is chosen as the one that is actually played, and which one is chosen as the one to bluff that you have.
All right.
And for the most part, I think most people will choose to play Valor because it is a guaranteed comeback unless you're playing a super rushy deck that if you get hit with Valor, you're not going to be able to come back anyways.
Ready when you are.
Valor is just ubiquitous. It is Game of Thrones. It's what defined Game of Thrones. I once had dinner with Eric Lang, who designed the original core box for Game of Thrones First Edition, and he told me that he designed that core box and Game of Thrones First Edition with Valor in mind. He said Valor was the first plot that he thought of, and he designed the game around Valor being the cornerstone plot. And essentially, without Valor, the game didn't exist. So it's very interesting to see that Second Edition is thriving without Valor and how it will adjust to Valor existing.
Never bad to have a Duke of Tyrion.
Well, it's not the greatest against Drac, but I think...
So Joe finishing up cementing this wall of death that is facing Marc. I think this will be the last plot that the players see.
I don't want to talk too loud.
They're just going through the motions at this point. That's why I've sort of stopped paying attention to the action. Joe has the match firmly in hand. Well played. You know, a little bit of sloppy play as far as the timing issues on Marc's side. I don't know if that was fatigue or just rushing through the phases a little bit too much, but Joe played very well. Again, seeing the strength of the LanniKraken deck. And clearly, as good as we all thought this deck was after winning this, it has since gone on to win 2 additional regionals, which really is incredibly impressive. There's no other way to say it. It's as simple as that. Everybody's trying to figure out how to beat that deck, and nobody seems to be able to. I imagine the Wolf Box, once people have time to digest it, will make a difference. But for now, people are playing what they know is good, and the LanniKraken is good. And so long as the list exists online, people will continue to net deck it. As they should, really. It's a safe deck to play. You know it's good, you know you'll do well with it, why wouldn't you?
I'm going to send Tyrion back to your hand.
It's what I did when I played the Lanni Crossing. I thought it was the best deck. I just was wrong. I got completely caught off guard by the LanniKraken.
Good game.
All right, Marc concedes. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. We will see you tomorrow night
Do you not play
for the first match of the cut, the top 8.
Oh, it just wasn't coming
Yeah,
up?
so I had to bet that one turn on Noble Cause, hoping to draw into...
Hoping
I
to
have
jam
all
it.
these different words.
Yeah, you were far enough behind that you have to take a gamble to try and hit one, I
Because
think.
if I don't hit a decent lord anyway, and of course I got Jamie to turn after that one.
Ugh.
Yeah. Which, I mean, probably wouldn't have helped me too much, but like it would have helped a little, right?
It certainly would have been a problem. I didn't want to see a Jamie over there.
Yep. No, well played though.
Well played. How do you like the double noble in that deck?
It's really good in this deck
Is it?
because every single good bomb is a noble. Every single one.
Your Jamies, you have Illyrio, you have Drogo, you have
Everything,
Danny.
yeah. And like, you know, it's you can basically go like start off with Drogo and, you know, Chud or Jamie Chud, and then you can go like Noble Cause, another good guy, and Jamie and Drogo or something, and then you can power off
good.
another
I'm
guy.
surprised I've never seen it run like that before.
Yeah,
It sounds like a great idea.
I've been
in
playing it out for a
TargLion.
while, and it's been amazing actually.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
Because the biggest problem with that banner is you can run into mana trouble or gold
Yeah,
trouble
exactly,
sometimes because everything's so pricey.
That's right.
I really like that.
I needed to hit like, you know, maybe just a slight bit more economy because I was one behind a couple times.
I
generally
was terrified of Danny.
Oh,
If
yeah.
Danny came, she was a game changer.
especially against. How did it turn out, boys?
I won.